And as we can see, we have the production unit 1 and have configured the control status dialog. We remember we have added a batch active bit, the bit for the tag for the batch name, and so on. We have talked about it yesterday morning in the summary. And then we have started configuring the data we want to record during a batch. For that, we started with the phases. As I just mentioned yesterday, there are two different ways to configure the phases inside of the PM quality. So if we open phases, so the first one we have configured here was directly done inside of the PM quality. So that means we are able to change the phases here inside of this phase group, and we could add more phases or delete someone. Create phases inside of the PM quality, if we go to the other ones, is not directly inside of the PM quality. So this phase group here was created inside of the PM server. So if we go to the PM server in the background and open the project here, then we have the state models. And if we open the state models, we see we have created the phases inside of the state model. The phases inside of the state model, or creating a state model inside of the PM server, are quite similar to what we have seen inside of the PM quality. So again, we have rules here inside of the state models. For the rules, we have states, so we have to define all states which are available or which the machine can have, or which states we are running through the process. And then we need to configure the rules. So that means if tag we will add to this state model definition will have one of these values here, then the PM server will translate this tag value to one of the states we have configured here. And for that, we have created a state model definition and then created an instance for this state model where we have added the tag we want to use for this state model here. And we have decided to choose the same tag as we have in the phases for the PM quality one, so that we receive the same data here. And after adding the tag here, then there's an internal tag created. We can find it in the stations, in the add eval station, and then state model. And then we can find the internal tag we need for this state model here, so where we receive the translated data from a tag value to the corresponding state. And this state model then, if we go back to the topology again, we have added to the second phase group inside of the PM quality. So we see this is, if we go back to the other one, we see this tag here is coming from the station local. So that means this one was a WinSysD tag. And if we go back one which was created inside of the PM server, we see the tag is coming from the add eval station. That means that was the one we have created inside of the PM server. And as we can then see, we are not able to change something here, so everything is grayed out. So we cannot change something here. If we want to change something, we have to go back to the PM server, to the state model, and change the definition there.
Phase này là định nghĩa từ nó này, từ PM quality này. Phase này định nghĩa từ state model. Làm hai cái khác nhau vậy. Ví dụ học.
Mà hai cái nó có gì khác
nhau?
Không. Cái kia có thể thay đổi từ state model.
Curves cyclic, that means we get the tag value of the specific tags we have added to one of these cycles in the
bởi vì state model này có thể sử dụng cho PM analyze để tính OE của máy.
And if we open that one, we see we have the temperature curve available, and if we just do a double click on it, we can open it, and then you can see using the new curve button, we can add some new curves here. We can change the curve cycle assignment, and we can have some more properties defined for this curve. So minimize that one again. Then we have talked about the snapshots yesterday. For the snapshots, there are the default triggers available for batch start, batch end, or at batch start end. And we have created our own trigger with the name ingredients. If we do a double click on it, we can open the configuration again. For the triggers or the manual triggers, it's important that we have a trigger event configured. That means we just add a tag to this field, and then we have to decide at which event we want to record the snapshot. So if we want to have when the tag is changing, or the tag value is changing, or if we want to record the values if the value changes to a specific value. So in this case, we decided that we want to have snapshots after we go through the dosing phase, so after the start of the next phase coming after the dosing. So that means if this value changes to 3, then we want to record the snapshots here. And after clicking on edit values, you can edit all the text you want to record during this snapshot here. Same thing as for the tag logging, you can add some new values here, we can delete values, and we can also change the group assignment if we want to have more trigger groups inside of this trigger, and then we can change the group we want to assign this specific tag to. And then again, we have some more properties available. We have added 2 trigger groups to this group here. First for the actual values and the second one for the set points. So just that we have all of the information in the report that we can need so that we see if the batch was valid or not. And the last thing we have done inside of the topology here was we have added the alarms. For that we can just add a new alarm group, configure the alarm so that we know which alarm archive from the Beam server we want to use here. We can configure which alarm blocks we want to have available inside of the report. We can set filters if we want the alarms we want to the batches. Then we have started working on some batches. So we have we had a look at the data view. We have started a batch and stopped the batch. Starting a batch is working if we have the batch active bit, which we then just change the value from 0 to 1. That means we start a batch, and if we reset this value to 0 again, then the batch is closed. And while working, so the batch is running, we can record all the data there. So that means we can go through the whole process of producing a product, and we can we record all the information, for example, for the temperature curve, which is configured in the tag logging inside of the topology. For example, we can record all the alarms, all the snapshots, then all the phases and so on. So while the batch is running, we record all of the data, and after we close the batch, we had the setting that the batch was automatically released. So it changes from the state, from a processed state to the released state. Remember, the icon then gets green, and after it is released, the batches are exported automatically that we have configured in the topology. And then we receive, for example, the PDF file, or we have exported it to an export database, for example. And then we had a look at how we can add laboratory values to an already closed batch. And for that, I will go back to the topology again. And for that, we have added a new snapshot group or a new trigger to the topology. And if we open that one, we can see that the configuration of this snapshot is a little bit different than what we have done for the ingredients. As we can see, we have enabled the batch name here. That means we can give the information to which batch we want to add this data we have configured here in this group. And that means if we insert a batch name inside of this tag here, while another batch is running, we can decide to which batch we want to add the data to. And the other configurations of the snapshots are quite the same. So that means we need a trigger event. We need to configure at which event we want to trigger this snapshot. We have to add the values we want to record during this snapshot here. The only difference is that we are not adding this data to the current running batch, so we're adding this data maybe to an older batch which is already closed. Important when using the lavatory value thing, so if you want to add data to a closed batch, the batch cannot be finalized at this moment when you want to add some more data. So that means in that case, you have to prevent the batches from being released automatically, because after they are released, they are exported, and when they are exported, they can be finalized. And after they are finalized, then of course you cannot add any more data, as the PM quality prevents us to modify the data after it is finalized. So be careful with that one here. And it's also possible to add the current batch name inside of this tag. So it's also possible to use the lavatory value snapshot thing to add data to the current batch. So this is also possible, but in this case, of course, you have to add the current batch name inside of this tag, just for your information here. So I will close that one again. After we have played a little bit with the first batch there, we have created our first report layout. To create a report